Why successful people talk to themselves differently. Has time ever stood still for you in those moments when you hear how someone talks to themselves, not out loud inside? And in that inner voice, there's something different, something that distinguishes it from your own. Maybe it was confidence that you lacked, maybe kindness to themselves that you so rarely allow yourself. Today, we're diving into one of the most intimate territories of human experience, the quality of our inner dialogue. Because how we talk to ourselves in the silence of our consciousness shapes not only our decisions, but the very fabric of our reality. And those we call successful have this dialogue structured in a completely special way. What if I told you that the difference between you and a person you consider successful might not be in talents, not in opportunities, not in luck, but in how exactly the voice in their head sounds? What if the most powerful tool of transformation is not somewhere out there in the external world, but here, in the space between your ears? Imagine for a moment, you're standing in front of a mirror in the morning. What does that voice tell you, the one that only you can hear? Didn't get enough sleep again? Should lose weight? Today will be another difficult day. Or is it something completely different? I wonder what today will bring. I'm ready to meet any challenges. My body is my ally. In transactional analysis, Eric Berne spoke about 3 ego states: parent, adult, and child. And when we observe the inner dialogues of people who have achieved significant results, we discover an amazing pattern. Their inner parent is not a critic, but a wise mentor. Their child is not frightened, but curious. And the adult asks completely different questions. Where the ordinary person asks, what if I fail? The successful person asks, what will I learn from this experience? Where one thinks, I can't handle this, another reflects, how can I approach this creatively? This isn't positive thinking in its superficial understanding. This is a fundamentally different architecture of inner space. But let's go even deeper. In neuropsychology, there's a concept of inner speech. This isn't just thoughts in words. It's a complex system of self-instruction that controls our behavior at a level below consciousness. When a child learns to ride a bicycle, they first speak aloud, pedal, keep balance. Then this voice goes inside and becomes automatic. In adults, the same principle works in all spheres of life. Our inner speech is the operating system of our personality. And here's what's amazing. In successful people, this operating system is configured fundamentally differently. Jung called this active imagination, the ability to conduct conscious dialogue with unconscious contents. But successful people take another step. They turn this dialogue into collaboration. They don't fight with their doubts, they invite them to conversation. Oh, fear of failure, you're here. What do you want to tell me? What important information do you carry? And here's something magical happens. Instead of suppressing or ignoring inner voices, they create an inner board of directors. Each voice gets a place at the table. Fear speaks about risks, enthusiasm about possibilities, wisdom about long-term consequences. Fatigue reminds about the need for rest. Ambition motivates growth. And at the head of this board sits not a dictator, but a skillful moderator, that part of personality that knows how to listen to all sides and make balanced decisions. Imagine the difference. An ordinary person hears the voice of fear and either becomes paralyzed by it or tries to drown it out. A successful person hears the same voice and says, "Thank you for caring about my safety. Let's figure out what specific risks you see and how we can minimize them." But there's another layer, deeper still. Successful people talk to themselves as to a friend, not as to a subordinate, not as to an enemy, not as to an object of criticism, as to a person they sincerely love and whose potential they believe in. Their inner dialogue is permeated with the same kindness they would show to a close friend experiencing difficulties. When they make mistakes, the inner voice doesn't scream, "You're an idiot." It gently says, "Okay, that didn't work. What can we extract from this?" When they face uncertainty, the voice doesn't whisper, "You're doomed," but wonders, What options do we have? How can we turn this into an adventure? Research shows that people with high self-efficacy use 80% more constructive formulations in their inner dialogue. Instead of, I must, they say, I choose. Instead of, I need to, I want to explore. Instead of, I'm obligated, I have the opportunity. These aren't semantic games. Every word in inner dialogue carries an emotional charge and programs the subconscious for a certain type of reaction. Must creates tension and resistance. Choose activates a sense of control and agency. There's another feature. Successful people regularly conduct meta-dialogues with themselves, conversations about conversations. They ask themselves, how am I thinking about this situation right now? Does this way of thinking help me? What other perspective can I choose? It's like how an experienced director simultaneously plays a role and observes the performance from the side. Such an observer position creates space for choosing a response instead of automatic reacting. Freud spoke about transference when we project our inner conflicts onto other people. But there's also a reverse process. We can internalize supporting voices of significant people. Successful people often carry within themselves not only the criticizing voices of childhood, but also the voices of mentors who believed in them. What would my teacher, who saw potential in me, say? How would my grandmother encourage me? What advice would that manager who helped me believe in myself give? These internalized supporting voices become part of the inner dialogue and create emotional resilience. Stop for a moment and listen. Right now, what voice is sounding in your head while you're listening to this? Critical, skeptical, or maybe curious? Or maybe you hear several voices arguing among themselves. You know what's most amazing? This voice. You can change it. Not force it to be silent, change it. As if you have a remote control for your inner radio, and you can switch the station from criticism FM to wisdom and support. Try right now to say something to yourself that a loving friend would say. Not sweet lies, not empty consolations, but something true and supportive. For example, you're doing everything you can with what you have right now, and that's already a lot. Or, your sensitivity isn't weakness, but a gift that helps you understand the world more deeply. Do you feel the difference? This isn't self-deception. This is neural pathway restructuring. Every time you choose a more compassionate inner voice, you literally reprogram your brain. You create new thinking patterns that become automatic. Remember the last time you made a mistake. What did your inner voice tell you? Now imagine that your best friend made exactly the same mistake. What would you tell them? Most likely, something much gentler and more supportive than what you tell yourself. This is called the self-compassion paradox. We often treat ourselves more harshly than any other person on the planet, and this doesn't serve us. Cruelty to oneself doesn't motivate, it paralyzes. Self-support, on the contrary, creates emotional safety in which courage to risk and grow appears. Next time you catch yourself in cruel inner dialogue, simply ask, what would a person who sincerely cares about my well-being say? And allow that voice to speak. At first, this will require effort like any new skill. But gradually, the new way of inner communication will become natural. Another exercise. Try giving yourself permissions instead of commands. Instead of, I must finish this project today, say, I allow myself to focus on this project. Feel how the inner tension changes. And remember, your inner critic formed over years. It won't disappear in a day, but you can start growing an inner ally next to it. At first, the ally's voice will be quiet and the critic's loud. But every time you consciously choose to listen to the ally, their voice becomes stronger. And here's where the most important discovery happens. Are you ready for it? Successful people don't become successful and then start talking to themselves differently. It's the opposite. They first change the quality of inner dialogue, and this change creates conditions for external success. Because our inner dialogue isn't just chatter in the head. These are instructions we give to the subconscious. This is the lens through which we see opportunities. This is the foundation on which we build every decision, every action, every reaction. When you tell yourself, "I'm not capable," the subconscious hears the command. Find confirmations of this. When you say, "I wonder how I can solve this," the subconscious gets the task. Find solutions. This isn't mysticism. This is neuroplasticity. This is how our brain works. Your subconscious works like the most powerful search engine in the world. It filters millions of bits of information every second and shows you only what corresponds to your inner queries. If the query sounds like, "Find dangers," you'll see threats everywhere. If the query is, "Find opportunities," the world will play with completely different colors. There's a famous experiment. People were asked to count how many times a team in white t-shirts would pass a ball in a video. Most participants concentrated so hard on counting that they didn't notice a person in a gorilla costume who walked right through the middle of the frame. This is called inattentional blindness. The same thing happens in life. Our inner dialogue programs attention filters. If you constantly tell yourself, "Nothing ever works out for me," you'll notice only failures and missed successes. If you say, "I learn and grow with every experience," you'll start seeing lessons and opportunities where you previously saw only problems. And here's the paradox. Changing inner dialogue is simultaneously the easiest and hardest thing. Easiest because it's the only thing over which you have complete control. No one can force you to think in a certain way. Hardest because it requires constant awareness and gentle persistence. But there's another level of understanding. Successful people don't just change the content of inner dialogue, they change its structure. Instead of a critic's monologue, they create a polyphony of voices. Instead of rigid judgments, flexible explorations. Instead of final verdicts, open questions. They transform inner space from a courtroom into a creative workshop, from a place of judgment into a place of experimentation. And this radically changes their entire life experience. Imagine that your consciousness is a house. In most people's houses lives one very noisy tenant, the inner critic, who's constantly dissatisfied with everything. Successful people populate this house with an entire family of wise inhabitants, an explorer who asks questions, a supportive friend who provides emotional support, a strategist who plans actions, a dreamer who sees possibilities, a realist who assesses resources. And most importantly, they appoint a good moderator who knows how to give the floor to each at the right moment and make balanced decisions. You know what inspires me most about this topic? That change begins right now, this very second. From the moment you decide to treat your inner voice as the voice of a dear friend, not a strict judge. This doesn't mean ignoring real problems or wearing rose-colored glasses. This means creating an inner environment where problems become challenges, mistakes lessons, and uncertainty an invitation to creativity. Think about it. If you had a friend who constantly told you the same things your inner critic says, how long would you communicate with them? A day? A week? Hardly. But this critic lives in your head 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Isn't it time for them to make room for more constructive voices? Start small. Today, when you catch yourself in self-criticism, simply add one word. Yet. I don't know how to do this yet. I can't manage this yet. I don't understand this yet. This tiny word opens doors to the future and turns a sentence into a temporary state. Or try replacing why with how. Instead of why am I such a failure, ask how can I improve the situation? Instead of why doesn't anything work out for me? How can I approach this differently? The first question leads to self-flagellation, the secanto finding solutions. Create a ritual of kind inner dialogue. Every morning, waking up, say something supportive to yourself. Every evening, falling asleep, thank yourself for the day lived. Not for achievements, for living another day, with all its difficulties and joys. Remember, your inner dialogue isn't the truth about you. It's simply a thinking habit that can be changed. Like any habit, it's changed not by willpower, but by patience, self-compassion, and constant practice. Tonight, when you're falling asleep, try talking to yourself the way you talk to someone you sincerely love. Thank yourself for the day lived. Say something kind. Not because you're perfect, but because you're a human who deserves your own kindness. And remember, every inner dialogue is an opportunity to become a little more compassionate to yourself, a little wiser, a little braver. Your inner voice isn't a sentence. It's a tool of creation, and you are its only owner. The world won't change when circumstances change. It will change when the voice in your head changes, and this change is in your hands, right now, until we meet in the next dialogue with yourself.